Look at this. Perfect tender lobster, buttery mashed potatoes, and a sauce that takes it over the top. This looks like something straight out of a high-end restaurant. But here's the thing. You can make this at home and it's easier than you think. First, let's talk about the lobster. A lot of people, even professional chefs, are messing this up without realizing it. Scoring, splitting it down the middle, that's how you ruin a lobster tail. I'm going to show you the right way to do it so it stays juicy, tender, and full of flavor. But we're not stopping there, because what's lobster without something amazing to go with it? We're making a full dish. Silky mashed potatoes, a rich, buttery sauce, and that perfect lobster tail. Whether you're making this for a special occasion or just trying to impress someone you love, this is a showstopper. And trust me, it's way easier than it looks. Alright, let's talk about the mistakes people make when they're cooking lobster tails, because I see this all the time, even in professional kitchens. One of the biggest ones, cutting the tail completely in half. Now, is it impossible to cook it this way? No, but it makes things way harder than it needs to be. When you split the tail, you're working with two thinner pieces instead of a whole tail. That smaller amount of meat cooks much faster, meaning it's harder to control. Scoring is another mistake. The idea is to help it cook evenly, but what actually happens is that these cuts let all the juices escape. Instead of a tender, juicy lobster, you get something tough and stringy. And here's another thing, curling. If you've ever cooked a lobster tail and it curls up into itself, that's because the meat is tightening up as it cooks. We want the meat to be the star of the show, not curled up hiding in the shell. By keeping the meat fully lifted out and properly supported, we let it cook evenly without curling. This gives you that beautiful restaurant quality presentation every time. So now that we know what not to do, let's prep this lobster tail the right way. First, we're going to butterfly this so it stays juicy, cooks evenly, and looks incredible on the plate. First, take a pair of kitchen shears and cut straight down the top of the shell. Don't go all the way through, just to the base of the tail. This lets us free the meat without cutting it in half. Now here's a key step most people miss. Take off the first rib of the shell. When the tail cooks, it naturally wants to curl. By removing this part, we're letting the meat sit on top of the shell while it curls underneath, giving us that perfect presentation. Now carefully separate the meat from the shell, keeping it connected at the base. Lift it up and lay it right on top. This does two things. It gives us that signature look, and it helps the tail cook more evenly by keeping everything together. See the difference? One's intact and ready to cook, and the other is losing moisture before it even hits the heat. At this point, we're ready to season and cook. Now, to keep this tail moist while it cooks, I'm adding just a little bit of water to the pan. This creates some gentle steam in the oven, keeping the meat juicy while it cooks through. We're cooking this at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until the meat turns from translucent to a solid white. No more opaque spots. This is how you know it's perfectly done. Now that our lobster is prepped, let's make the mashed potatoes, the perfect base for this dish. I'm using Yukon Golds because they're naturally butter and gives us that smooth, creamy texture without needing a ton of extra fat. Anytime you peel potatoes, you want to keep them in water as you go. This stops them from turning brown before you're ready to cook. Cut the larger pieces in half to ensure they are evenly cooked. Now we're going to start these off in cold water. If you drop the potatoes in boiling water, the outside cooks too fast before the inside gets tender. Bringing them up slowly gives us an evenly cooked, fluffy potato. And don't forget to season the water. Potatoes are like sponges. They absorb flavor while they cook. Once the potatoes are fork tender, meaning a knife slides through them with no resistance, we drain them and mash them while they're still hot. Now for the good stuff. I pour the mashed potatoes on room temperature butter and give it an initial mash. I then add hot cream, salt, and white pepper. The pepper gives us that nice warmth without the little black flakes in our potatoes. Mix that all together until it's smooth and fluffy. And there you go, rich, buttery mashed potatoes that are a perfect base for our lobster tail. Next, we're making a Beurre Blanc to tie everything together. This sauce should be silky, velvety, buttery, and will elevate this dish. We start by adding 1 small minced shallot to the pan. Next, pour in half a cup of dry white wine and a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. If you want to add a little more depth, you can also use lobster stock like I'm doing in this video. That's optional, but it adds a nice richness. We're going to simmer this over medium heat until it reduces down to about 2 tablespoons of liquid. This concentrates the flavor and gives us an incredible base for our sauce. Once it's reduced, you can add a tablespoon of of heavy cream for a bit of extra richness. This step is optional, but it gives the sauce an even more luxurious feel. Now, kill the heat and start whisking in your cold butter, 1 cube at a time. The key here is to whisk consistently so that the butter emulsifies into the sauce and we get that smooth, velvety texture. Once all the butter is incorporated, taste it for seasoning and add a pinch of salt to bring everything together. I like to add a pinch of cayenne and smoked paprika for a little warmth and color. It's a subtle kick that ties everything together. And there you have it, a creamy Beurre Blanc that acts as a perfect base to our plate. Alright, now that everything's done, let's plate this up. Presentation is key, and with a dish like this, we want every layer to shine. First, we will add a generous spoonful of our beautiful Beurre Blanc to the bottom of the plate. This not only adds a rich flavor base, but it also gives the dish a nice sheen. Next, we're going to add our mashed potatoes right in the center. Just a nice fluffy mound to anchor everything together. Now, for the star of our show, our perfectly cooked lobster tail. Place it right on top of these mashed potatoes so it stands tall and proud. To finish the lobster, I'm adding a little more butter right on top. Finally, we're going to top it off with some nice freshly chopped parsley for a little color and a touch of freshness. And there you have it, a stunning restaurant quality dish that's simple enough to make at home, but special enough to impress any guest. As always, thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. If you want some professional cooking tips, make sure to check out my hundreds of YouTube shorts where I give insight on food science, more cooking tips, and food history. Thank you for watching.